Hello there, I'm Keith Campbell, Independent Bishop of the Home Temple, and welcome to Godsmarts. So first of all, a few announcements. I am still looking for work in my full-time position as a database designer and developer, so keep your good intentions and prayers coming for that, and I'll let you know how that goes. Let's see. Secondly, there have been some interesting new videos by Leo, the fellow who runs actualize.org, particularly about enlightenment. I'll play the beginning of one real quick here.
Hey, this is Leo for actualized.org. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about how to become enlightened, the exact step-by-step process.
So the video is rather long, but it's an excellent first-rate video on the mental steps that are necessary for guiding yourself through the process of becoming enlightened. It's one of these finger pointing the way to the moon videos that helps you get your mindset in the correct direction for enlightenment to occur. This is no guarantee that you're going to become enlightened after watching this video. It's just increases the likelihood. Increases your chances of having a good result. So I'd highly recommend giving it a listen. Then there's the other matter of the book that I had been researching, which was The Lost Gospel, about Jesus and Mary Magdalene and their possible marriage. That one I found got increasingly bizarre and speculative the longer one read it. It has some interesting ideas, but I don't think it solidly lays the foundation of them. It does, however, bring up an interesting question that I wanted to discuss with you today, which is historical accuracy in the Gospels. Now, we're used to asking the question, particularly in modern times, is this book historically accurate? Are the Gospels historically accurate? Do we have a historically accurate representation in the Gospels of what Jesus did? Now, the question arises, why is that so important? How important is it that our Bibles are actually historically accurate? Does God somehow guarantee that the Bible is historically accurate? I don't necessarily think he does. We have to ask ourselves, does that really matter? Which is more important? A Bible that would be completely historically accurate, or one that is spiritually true and can affect people in a positive way? I think the answer is obvious. It's the spiritual effect that is the important thing in a gospel or a Bible or a spiritual record of any kind. So, how did this obsession that we have these days with historical accuracy get started? Well, in earlier ages, the craft of making history was much more fluid, much more volatile, if you will. And you would find that historians would invent a dialogue for someone if they felt it fit in well with the character and the situations. They would rearrange the facts to make a particular point. In many cases, regarding Christianity, a lot of the items that weren't included in the Bible often are simply fabrications. They're simply stories that were made up to go along with the life of Jesus. Now, this may be interesting, but the issue that comes up is that there were very many different and contradictory histories of Jesus floating around from very shortly after the time that Jesus lived. Now, we have one set of these in our New Testament. There are some internal contradictions in the Gospels that we have in our actual Bible. But there were also many other versions that were left out for various reasons, or that appealed to certain groups who later became shunned for various reasons. So the question is, which of these do we turn to for the real historical look at what Jesus said and did? Now, you can always go with your historical methods and try to determine exactly what Jesus historically said and did. And I recommend that. I recommend it highly as an exercise, even though it requires some study. But it will get you closer to understanding Jesus if you really make the effort to understand historically what he said and did. And all that is perfectly well and good, but when you have this historical Jesus put together, you have to realize that you've kind of stepped into the camp of the materialists, for whom historical accuracy is the holy grail, so to speak. They have created a scheme of truth wherein the historical accuracy, the facts, the physical, verifiable facts, are far more important than any of the meaning or any of the spirituality. And that's not a good situation to be in, because what if one day it's discovered that Jesus was very different than how we now imagine him to be? Some huge cache of historically valuable information is discovered that throws completely new light on what Jesus taught and how he was, or even casts extreme doubt on whether Jesus really existed. Now, there's a minor movement in historical circles right now to claim that Jesus never existed, or that he was in large part a fabrication. Now, it is true that in large part, a lot of what we believe currently about Jesus is kind of a historical creation, or rather a fictional creation that grew over the years. But what if someday evidence comes up to the effect that Jesus never really existed, or didn't exist at all the way we thought he did? He was a completely different person. Would that destroy your faith? Would that destroy the spiritual teachings of Christianity? Well, why should it really? Why should a historical fact destroy a spiritual meaning? There doesn't seem to be any good reason why it should, except this silly prejudice that we have that says that physical facts are more important than spiritual meanings. And I'm sorry, but that's not true. Physical facts are not important in the same way that spiritual meanings are. So I'd like you to consider that. Consider that for a lot of reasons, but whether it's creation science or biblical science, a lot of the arguments that we get into, we paint ourselves into a corner of insisting on the historical truth of what we're saying, and it doesn't allow us any room to maneuver, any room to consider the interesting theories and options that the historians come up with. We are stuck interpreting Jesus's facts in one particular way to meet our theory. And I think we'd be a lot more comfortable if our theory was not bound up in the exact historical facts. Because historical facts can change. History is a changing subject. It doesn't arrive at absolute truth. Whereas our spirituality should at least point us in the direction of the absolute truth, of truth with a capital T. So, on that note, I would like to say goodbye for now, and we'll see you again next time. For Godsmarts, I'm Keith Campbell. See you soon.